Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 8 minutes after 4. I've tried to give some grace today with the rain and the traffic, and really appreciate all of you who have made it here to Crownsville for our second commission meeting. And I also want to extend greetings to, I believe we have 3 commissioners joining us virtually, and glad you could do so. Let's get started. Today's meeting will be in 2 halves, approximately. We'll take care of some additional housekeeping type matters in the first half of the meeting. Then we'll take a short break, and you should help yourself to snacks in the back. And then we'll have the substantive part of the meeting, which is a very important presentation, and one might say series of presentations from the Department of Juvenile Services. And Secretary Schiraldi will be happy to introduce those members from his office who will do the presentations. Let me start first by thanking you again all for being here and wishing you happy holidays. I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. When it's appropriate in the course of the meeting, either now or a little later, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our November meeting. It's in your loose sheets that's been provided to you. So if you haven't had a chance to look them over from the email that was sent, please take a look at them today so that we can approve the minutes and they can then be posted to the public. Unfortunately, we have heard of interest, understandably, from members of the public and others in having access to live streaming of our meetings. And we do absolutely intend to provide that, but we haven't been able to do it yet. But I can assure you that staff are working on that issue. And hopefully by the next meeting at the latest, we will have taken care of the gremlins that are affecting our ability to provide live streaming, so that live streaming is available to all members of the public without having to come to the meeting in person. Let me say that owing to requirements of law related to the Open Meetings Act and Public Information Act, I have been outfitted, if I can use that word, with a second telephone that is a government telephone, mobile phone, for use in connection with my duties as chair of the commission. Believe me, at this point in my life, the last thing I needed was a second telephone. But the good news really is I also have a laptop dedicated to the commission's work. So the good news from my perspective, and I hope from yours, is that once I get it up and running, and it is up, but it'll be another week or so before I have the time to actually sit down and set it all up. You will be able to reach me directly by phone, text, or email, and I will know that it's commission business because it'll come in that phone or on that laptop. And I promise you that I will be responsive to every request, observation, suggestion, question you have to me directly. That said, let me also not fail to point out what a spectacularly competent, friendly, and effective staff this commission is lucky to have working with it. Dr. Young to my right, Bethany Young, Ainsley Minch, under the leadership of the inimitable Dorothy Linnick, really have just done just a fantastic job in getting this Boeing 747 off the ground. I think you know what I'm saying. You all have gotten emails and notices and reminders, and that's just a small piece of the incredible work that they are doing, and I know they will do. So I want to thank them for their help so far, and thank them again in advance for what I know will be just an extraordinarily well executed a body of work that we can expect from them, not just the commission itself, but each and every one of the work groups. So you did not hesitate ever to reach out to Bethany and to Ainsley for any requests, concerns that you might have of any sort. They are absolutely responsive, and I really appreciate that. I also want to call your attention to the fact that there is a website, the GoCap website, and we are one of many commissions and offices and programs under GoCap that have our own website there. So if and when you need to check on something, it's of course available to you. So you all are aware that we now have assigned a vice chair of the commission, a secretary to the commission, and co-leaders of each of our work groups. And we're going to review the work group outline with you in a few minutes. I think we're successful, and I do mean we, working with staff, we were successful in giving each and every one of you your first choice of assignment to a work group. And I'm very happy about that. You made it very easy for us, frankly. And we've done our best to align your expertise, your interests, your background and experience with subject matters that are familiar to you, that you are engaged with, and that you look forward to working on. That said, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Bethany as we go along to suggest changes of whatever sort, to ask for reassignment, and so on. I expect this to be, and so far it very much has been, an organic process. And we very much want your input every step along the way to make this this program of reinventing juvenile justice in the state of Maryland a success. So we will continue to work closely together. You had a deadline that you probably didn't know about. As of 2 o'clock today, you had to let me know if you were dissatisfied with your assignments, and I heard no dissatisfaction. So you are stopped for the time being with your assignment, and I know you will do a really wonderful job. There are a few things that we didn't mention at last month's meeting, the inaugural meeting, that I do want to mention today, and that is on the subject of reports. You're going to do a lot of reading as a part of your work, obviously, on this committee. And by the way, the reading will be of a very high quality material. And I think, you know, the linchpin of this commission's work will be data and evidence. And I circulated, I think you'll see in your loose leaf just today, a report that came from the Sentencing Project that focuses on Baltimore City and the media's attention to criminal activity by young people in Baltimore City. And I commend that to your attention. We're not picking on anybody. We're not picking on any media outlet at all. But what I will say about that report, as you will see when you have a chance to review it, is that it is absolutely supported by real data, carefully curated and analyzed. And that will mark the work of this commission. We will never ask you to spend time reading or studying something that is just somebody's bald opinion about something. As Senator Moynihan famously said, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but nobody's entitled to their own facts. So this commission's work will be driven by evidence-based, sound data and analysis, curated in a reliable, methodical way. And everything that we distribute to you will meet that standard. And every work product that we present to the governor and to the speaker and to the president of the Senate and the General Assembly will meet that standard. So there are a number of reports that we've been provided, and it's surprising to me, and I suspect surprising to you, frankly, the number of reports that are mandated to be produced and produced to us. And they include, again, most recently, a report from DJS twice a year on non-fatal shootings of youth under supervision. Other reports include treatment plans that are mandated by the court. They will be provided to the commission, as well as reports from the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit operating for a long time here in Maryland. So we will get those reports. We will highlight those parts of them that we want to bring to your attention particularly, but we encourage you to find the time, as we confidently will, on your own to examine those reports to better inform your work with the committee. And then I'll just mention, as an aside, the Thrive program, which I don't know if it will be mentioned today or not, but we will come to know and recognize the Thrive program operated by the DJS, which has won awards and is shown to have been successful in many, many instances. Not perfect, nothing is perfect, but we think it's something that should be held up to be pursued. I think that's all I have by way of introductory preliminary remarks. I will invite a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Minutes will be posted forthwith. Okay, so let's move on again on procedural housekeeping organizational stuff. I've asked Dr. Young to lead us through just really a stroll, if you will, through the work groups. You'll notice, and you already know, that we've tweaked a number of the work groups, I think to great benefit for the commission's work. And she's going to explain some of the thinking behind some of that tweaking. And at the end of her brief walkthrough, I'll invite any questions at that time before we take a break and hear from the secretary and the staff from DJS. Dr. Young.
Thank you, Judge. Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to go through the commission work group assignment. You should have it in your folder. You got it over email too. So the changes that happened, you will have noticed when we met in November, we had a treatment work group and a reentry work group. We combined those to create a rehabilitation group based on feedback we got from commissioners, because those two work groups have potential overlap. It made sense to put them together. And we also added a prevention work group. So again, hearing from commissioners about a desire to focus on upstream intervention, we added that to the array of work groups. So with that being said, the first work group you have in your document is the fatality review work group, which will review DJS investigations of fatalities involving children under DJS supervision. So if a child was killed while supervision or involved in the death of someone else while under supervision, the Fatality Review Committee will look at that. And we have proposed Judge Weathersby and District Attorney Carlotta Woodward as co-chairs for that work group, with other members being Sheriff Baker, Delegate Phillips, Senator Charles, and DJS will also have a seat for a designee for the secretary on that work group. We are still waiting on 2 appointments, one for superintendent and one for principal. So you'll see throughout the title without a name. We expect that we will have that in the spring, those 2 seats filled. So we'll, again, just look out for that information as we have it, we'll share it with you. The second work group, as we mentioned, is new from last month. And it's the prevention work group. So this work group will review and offer recommendations to improve services to youth before they get involved in the juvenile justice system, hopefully preventing system involvement. We have proposed co-chairs Aubrey Edwards-Luce and Dr. Donna Christie, who is joining us virtually today. And I know Aubrey is on her way in. She's in the weather-related traffic. On that work group, we have Ruben Alvarez, Eric Ford, Chief Hamill, Delegate Bartlett, Chief Carter Nickerson, who's also with us virtually, Rondalyn Reed, Senator Charles, and again, both DHS and DJS will be represented on this work group as well. Work group 3, we have juvenile justice processes and system coordination. This work group will review and offer recommendations to improve the processes by which juveniles move throughout the juvenile justice system and investigate how to improve interagency coordination. We have as co-chairs for this work group, Public Defender Alicia Capozzello and Susan Levinson. Also on this work group, we have Denise Henderson, Lacey Davis, Nate Bailiff, Ruben Alvarez, Delegate Phillips, Dr. Liz Park, Sheriff Baker, Senator Smith, and DHS and DJS will have representation on this work group. And I'll just say that for all of the work groups, we have the cabinets with seats there. Work group 4, youth rehabilitation services, which again is the combined treatment and reentry work group from last month. This work group will review and offer recommendations to improve rehabilitative treatment and reentry services for youth involved in the system. We have proposed as co-chairs for this work group, Dr. Bessinger, Dr. Liz Park. Also sitting on this work group, Carlotta Woodward, Terry Diggs, Hannah Schwartz, Delegate Bartlett, our Chief Carter Nickerson, Chief Russell Hamill, Senator Smith, and Secretary, DHS and DJS will both have seats there. And last but not least, we have public education and narrative change. The objective for this work group is to educate the public about the challenges and the promise of Maryland children and explaining the relevant data in an informative and accessible way to inform policymaking. I'm going to add here, and I've identified opportunities to invite the public in and hear from them about their experiences and perspectives. And we have co-chairing this work group, Nate Bailiff and Eric Ford. Aubrey Edwards-Luce will sit on this work group. Rondalyn Reed, Alicia Capozzello, Terry Diggs, Lacey Davis, Susan Levinson, Dr. Bettinger, and once we have the appointment, the appointed principal will also sit on this work group.
Thank you, Bethany. And just a couple of additional observations. As the prerogative of the chair, it just seems to me to be perfectly obvious, and I hope that view is shared by all of you, that if we don't talk about prevention, if we don't talk about directing ways to redirect young people, we're kind of not doing a full job as this commission, and thus we have this concern about what happens before someone becomes in the system. And that's the idea behind focusing on prevention. And as you can see from the description, it's a broad portfolio, and I'm very hopeful that there will be real meaningful recommendations that come out of what that work group takes a look at. With regard to the secretary's designation for each work group, again, strikes me as rather obvious. We are going to rely very heavily in the work that we do on expertise. Not just expertise, but expertise matters in our work. And it would be silly, yes, of course, to fail to take full advantage of the existing expertise we already have in state government, and particularly in the Department of Juvenile Services. So we will expect that in every work group session, there will be a designee of the secretary sitting in to be a resource and to help answer questions and fill in the gaps of knowledge that might well exist, even among the extraordinary expertise that we have among commissioners. And by the way, of course, every work group session, with two exceptions, particularly with relation to the non-fatal shooting and fatal shooting material and work, will be open to the public, and any commissioner is free to attend any work group session. So think of it this way: you're all a member of every work group. Okay, but when it comes to voting, if there is voting at the work group level, only those assigned formally by the chair of the commission will have a vote. And in that regard, again, I think repeating the obvious, formal recommendations and formal findings of the commission will only come from the commission sitting as a body. So that while the work groups are very important and will make recommendations to the full commission for as action items, findings, and recommendations to the General Assembly, the work groups themselves will not have the authority and do not have the authority under the statute to make recommendations. So with that, let me open it up to any questions, observations, or any curiosity. Anyone with us virtually have a question? Okay. Terrific. Terrific. Well, as I promised, we're going to let's keep it to 5 minutes. There are snacks in the back. I don't think the secretary will mind if you're snacking while the presentation is being put forward. But Mr. Secretary, we look forward to this first substantive session of the commission. And I know that you're going to lift our knowledge base significantly just in the next 60 or 75 minutes that you have to educate us about what DJS does, what it does well, maybe not so well, what its aspirations are, what its victories are, and we look forward to your presentation. So let's take an 8-minute break, okay? 8-minute break.
But yeah, so they Yeah.
Yes.
He faded. I did. When they have very poor. I know. Yeah, yeah. You there is, sorry, you had a baby and I was like, yes. All right, good to see you. How you been? One, okay. You were. Didn't work out. Okay. Like.
I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Okay. January, you're gonna tell me. You got that much ones I can come in. Good to see you. All right. Happy that, you know, getting ready for our big day, really, trying to get earlier yesterday. Yeah, we report. For just your brother. Yeah, I'm sure they're gonna pass it out.
I'm like, yeah, this is got.
What happened?
I've had enough.
Otherwise. But then you're out. They're relatively get there. Oh, no, just. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm getting. Yeah. That's. Oh. Okay. Right. And that's our scene. Now, let me give it up.
Oh, great. No, not what that.
Yeah.
Then I'm.
Yeah, but that's what we're gonna get. You're gonna get.
Okay, if we can reconvene.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Got my water. Good try.
Yeah.
I will have water.
I'm just scored. Good job, Senator. All right. I'm going off. Looks like everybody has the back
they need. So, Mr. Secretary, I will, invite you to take the lead.
Thank you, Judge. I want to be the first to congratulate you on having a government. So I'll try to be quick, because really what you want to do is you want to hear from my two deputy secretaries. Thank you for inviting us here. I actually, was with a bunch of my top level administrators to do community service work, work for Deputy Secretary Gary, who's the Deputy Secretary for Community Services today. And it was just a listening session. I said at the end, if I could do anything to help you guys, what would it be? And they said, explain our system to people, because people just so profoundly don't understand what we're trying to do. And it's frustrating for them, the day-to-day workers are frustrated that, finger always gets pointed at us. Sometimes we deserve the finger. I'm not like saying we're blameless, but people don't understand why we actually have a juvenile system versus an adult system. These sort of foundational principles can get lost during times of moral panic. And I think this body needs to be the antidote to some of that. So thank you for this opportunity. Also, I just want to say 2 reports came out today that I think are of interest. You mentioned in the report we issued on shootings to the commission showed a 50% decline in the number of our kids that were killed this year. So Judge, Judge Weathersby, we're making your job hard. The only right number is 0, but a 50% reduction is really hopeful in my view, and a 25% reduction in the number of young people shot. There are also a very small portion of overall juvenile shooting, overall shootings in the state, which you wouldn't know from the media, which gets me to the second report, which is the Sentencing Project's report. I've only had a chance to glance at it. I came out today. I'm glad you circulated it, but it shows a pretty profound level of over coverage of juvenile crime in that the impact that may have on the public, whether or not they've been victimized by crime. And so it's a very interesting day for us all to be here as guardians of data and reason, and rational thought against what sometimes can be not so rational thought. I just want to say that today. You go to the next slide, please. As I said, we had starting with Deputy Secretary for Community Services, Lisa Gary, who's going to take you through our approach to community services. And Deputy Secretary Adina Levi, who's in charge of residential services, will talk to you about our services for kids in residential. And then we'll go to questions and answers. So I'm going to literally metaphorically drop the mic. Here are we going back.
All right, thank you. So I am Deputy Secretary Lisa Gary. Just so you'll know, Tara Anderson, our legislative director, has tightly scripted me, and I am going to stay in the context because I can talk about what we do all day, every day in 12 different ways. So I want to use my notes as much as I can, but also questions may come up, and I think that we have questions reserved for the end of the presentation. So if you do have a question, you should jot it down. Again, I am Deputy Secretary of Community. We have 5 regions in the state of Maryland that includes Baltimore City, the central region, Baltimore City is the zone region. The central region, the entire eastern shore, which is all 9 counties, western Maryland, and, area called Capital South, which is Montgomery, Prince George, and the Tri-County area, Tri-County, area. On any given day, we can have 2,400 kids approximately in the community, under some form of decision making. And that would be, kids who are, under, either at the point of intake and under informal adjustment. That it could include kids who are, also those who are, being, in between adjudication and disposition, and those who are at probation and aftercare. So the way I like to frame what we do is to, and even though all of you know either all of this or some in part, I like to frame the, how kids experience our system in terms of how they enter and progress through each decision point. And more importantly, the different decisions that are being made, not only by our agency, but also other judicial partners. And so today I'm going to go through what happens from the point of intake, what happens when there is a detention request, what happens from judicial processes as well as disposition, and then probation, aftercare, and then how the law mandates certain actions by DJS and other actions that we take because it's in the best interest of young people in public safety. So we'll start with the DJS intake. We have the ability in Maryland to divert young people from formal system enrollment, but we don't make that decision in a vacuum. So at the time that we receive our complaints, the vast majority of complaints that we receive come from law enforcement, and the vast majority are in the form of paper referral, not kids taken into custody. Kids who are taken into custody are typically those who have been arrested for more serious offenses. So we get our referrals, for the most part from law enforcement, but also citizens can come into any of the local offices that file a complaint. And when I say law enforcement, that also includes the, school resource officers. So school-based referrals are also, how we receive many of our complaints. And so those things come into, those complaints come into the DJS office. And the reason why, I want to highlight diversion, because people underestimate the power of diversion. Research shows that young people who are diverted are less likely to reoffend when given their appropriate service. So we do, continue to exercise our ability legally, our authority legally to divert young people, but they have been some changes in terms of who we can divert. So from the point of that referral, DJS can make 3 decisions. We can resolve a case, meaning that no action is taken. Most cases that are resolved, they've done so because we have not established juvenile court jurisdiction, which means either something in police report is not accurate or the young person does not criteria in terms of juvenile court age. And so, or the case can be resolved because of lack of seriousness as well as active and engaged young person and family. So we're able to, in some instances, resolve the case. We can also informally adjust the case, and that is diversion. And so I'll speak briefly in a few seconds about who we can and cannot divert. And the third decision is that we can actually move forward the petition or the complaint to the state attorneys for formal petition to the court. So of those 3 decisions, when we are able to divert young people, violent felonies and handgun violations, we are not allowed by law to divert. Those cases must be forwarded to the local state attorney's office for its decision making. And diversion can happen in 3 spaces. It can happen because law enforcement diverts. We can divert if the law allows us to, and also the state attorney can determine to divert some cases depending on local practice strategies. So again, we are required to send every complaint that is a violent felony and a handgun violation. Prior to this year's legislation, HB 814, the Juvenile Justice Reform Council legislation of 2022 allowed us to divert nonviolent felonies independently. We can no longer do that under HB 814. That rolled back a bit. So we have to request a review and approval of the state attorney's office to divert nonviolent felonies as of November 1st, 2024, when HB 814 was implemented.
So this means that the state attorney's office decides what to do with all carjacking offenses, serious offenses, armed robbery, other types of offenses. We can divert misdemeanor offenses, but we also are required by law to notify the victim, the person who is making the complaint, and the arresting officer, and or the arresting officer. And if they want to appeal our decision to divert those cases, they can. But we can, again, continue the practice of diverting for misdemeanor offenses. A misdemeanor offense, for example, would be, let's say, a school site, where we get a referral for second degree assault. We can divert that if we, again, notify the victim, the complainant,
and or the arresting officer. So we use what is called an independent, an intake decision tool, IDT. The IDT has been validated by the University of Maryland,
School of Social Work and Innovation, and it's a tool to help us
determine a young person's risk and needs.
and help us to get closer to individualizing what diversion services should look like, because it's not a cookie cutter, not one thing fits all kids. Also, there are diversion services that are prescriptive to what the actual incident was. So when you have a actual victim who is willing to engage in, for example, community mediation, we can use that kind of diversion program based upon individual, what we're finding from the IBT, and trying to prevent kids from entering the system unnecessarily. Again, can we resolve this and address delinquent behavior without formal or more progressive system involvement? Diversion services can be inclusive of restorative practice such as community mediation, community competence, even teen court is active in some jurisdictions.
It can be inclusive of evidence-based practices such as FFT and MFT, as well as behavioral health, functional family therapy, and multi-systemic therapy. Try to stay away from acronyms. We can use mentoring, victim awareness classes, shoplifting abatement. So some of those courses are offered by our intake officers themselves, and we are also going to be rolling out cognitive behavior to training skills as a form of diversion for youth and families, teaching them how to respond differently to different triggers in community, and thereby stay away from additional delinquent behavior. If a youth is not successful in participating in the informal adjustment or the diversion service, then we can refer that case to the state attorney's office for a formal petition. So let's say, for example, we have a school resource officer sends a paper referral through of a fight that happened in school, second degree assault. The young person who is being alleged to have been engaged in it, we do a IDT on that young person to identify their risk and need, their level, whether it's low, medium, or high. We also have a conversation with that, do an interview or intake conference with the young person and their parent and or guardian, as well as the victim. And sometimes in school-related events, we also have an opportunity to speak to the school staff, including administrators and law enforcement officers, the arresting officer, or the officer handling the complaint. After doing that, let's say we understand that young person is low risk, then we can actually engage with the approval and of the victim to participate in a community mediation to resolve issues and then be able to close the case. So that's how we use diversion services as an example. And what we found, we have a very high rate of success with diversion, with 92% of our cases that have been diverted. The kids do not have any new sustained offenses within 1 year. So that's a very good success rate in those instances where we are able to divert, or again, we are pursuing vigorously the ability to divert nonviolent felonies, again, but with the permission and review under state attorney's office. So next slide. Okay, thank you. I can't see that. I was getting old. I can't. I'm looking at my paper. So detention. So a lot of times I think detention is the single most misunderstood resource, service, and decision point, because many,
Particularly by the public, because many people think that detention is the answer for quote unquote accountability, and that is not where services happen. That's a temporary hold for a young person to get them before the court and to go through a judicial process, to determine whether or not they would be, held accountable for that. But a lot of times, everyone expects that detention is the answer to the issue of delinquency. It is not. It is at the very front of the system. It's a front door into the system. And so when we receive a complaint, sometimes when kids are taken into custody by police will request the secure hold or the secure detention of a young person. And if we make 3 decisions as a result of that request, we can either choose not to authorize the use of security detention or community detention. We can decide to detain that young person, which means that we will authorize detention as requested by the officer, or we can use an alternative to detention as a means of ensuring that that young person is held securely and safely in community with assurances that he or she will appear for court and do so without reoffense. We use again another validated instrument for that particular decision making as our detention risk assessment instrument, the D-Ray. So our D-Ray, young people will come up as either low risk, moderate risk, or high risk of 2 things: reoffending while pending hearing on their current offenses, or for not appearing for scheduled hearing.
so when we make our decision,
We make it according to the risk score, but we're also using
some policy also to decide who
gets held. So all serious offenses, category 1 offenses are held in security detention. We also are able to hold kids who are commit crimes of violence or handgun offenses. We will hold those young people automatically. Or if they are low or moderate risk and they have been charged with a crime of violence based upon their D-Ray score and what we understand in terms of any mitigating circumstances, we may use an alternative to detention with CD electronic monitoring, which is our most restrictive.
I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, thank you. I just wanted to remind everybody that the flow chart in your binders might be helpful as you listen to the Secretary's presentation. It is in your binder. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, and the presentation itself will be.
Yeah, that's
provided
also up there.
to the committee.
Okay.
But there's a flow chart in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that's okay. You helped me get right back on point. So again, our 3 decisions is to either authorize, not authorize, or use an alternative to detention. Our alternative to detention programs can be straight community detention, where they have a community detention officer who checks them frequently, with that young person, throughout the week. We also use, evening reporting centers where a young person is with us. They're picked up by us out there. They stay with us from 3 to 9 p.m. and they're dropped off by us. Those are our evening reporting centers. The department runs 3 local evening reporting centers, and we have contracts with 4 additional evening reporting centers. So in the state of Maryland currently we have 7 evening reporting centers, and then also we have GPS, which is global positioning system, and EM, which is electronic monitoring. The differences between the 2 devices is that EM is proximity, so it monitors the range of a young person's movement away from the box that is centered in his or her assigned residence. Global positioning system, GPS, is just what it is. Wherever they are, we know immediately where they are. And so we use a range or an array of those services to ensure that they are held securely and safely in the community, but more importantly, that they get to court and do so without offense. The next slide. So adjudication is the next part of the case processing flow. Adjudication, similar to the adult system, is when a child is determined to be vaccinated or the adult system is guilty or not guilty. So once we get a young person to the point of adjudication, they actually we're actually able to
once the court determines their facts sustained rather, that is their way into, okay, now I am in the system, I was charged with the delinquent act, and now I'm being determined to have been involved in the system. I'm being involved in an actual offense. And at that point, if youth are found facts sustained, the court then moves to what is a disposition hearing. I won't go to the next slide yet. But after a adjudicatory hearing, we conduct another assessment, which is our multidisciplinary, our Merlin Comprehensive Assessment and Service Planning tool. That is our way of identifying individualized needs. What I will say is that has not yielded the results, quite frankly, that I think we should have, or that we even think we should have, because it is not as individualized, and it has really, presented itself more as a cookie cutter, in terms of you cannot push around children into square holes. And so we are moving to replace the use of our math process, which is the multi-assessment service team plan, which is how we determine what happens with young people. Yes. Yes. So for youth and family team, it will center youth and family voice in a way that it has never been centered in Maryland. That means that not only are they at the table, but they are actually saying what their vision is for their life, what they are able to achieve, what they are willing to engage in. Because again, if we think about evidence-based services, or think about yourself, as I have my son is involved in the system, I may not want to engage in functional family therapy. I may think my family is quite functional. And so it's a means of introducing evidence-based practice to families, but also trying to figure out what will they engage in, because there's no sense in ordering something that they are adamant that they will not do. So we want to use youth and family team process to get to what the individualized services should be, and that will guide our recommendation to the court at the point of. Thank you. So at this position, the court can do one or two things. They can do, so the court is making the decision at this stage. I'm going to go back. I'm sorry. Kara would kill me if I don't do that. When we make a decision to detain a young person or to place that child on community detention, that's our first decision. Those kids must go to court the next business day, and the court makes the decision from there whether they will continue their detention or release them to the care or custody of a guardian, or release them to CD, community detention. What we have found is that the court pretty much has been, I've been tracking this for the last 90 days. The court agrees with us at least 78 to 80% of the time. They do the exact same thing that we do, which means that first decision that we make is critical, because it's likely to continue for that young person. So if we actually place the child in detention, the court is more likely to place that child, return that child to detention. So we want to make sure we're not putting kids in detention who don't meet the criteria, or who could be safely supervised in the community. And that's the rub. That's the work for us to want to educate the public about how we make that decision, but also assurances about what we do in the community to supervise them. They're just not out there without any kind of supervision or service.
You can't forget favor.
And back.
Medical, you know.
No, go ahead.
Thank you. The demon knowledge is ultimately better. So, it's a disposition for me. Mhm.
So the disposition hearing, the court can either, again, place the child on out-of-home placement or place the youth on probation service where they receive community-based services. There is a range under the HB 814, increased the range a bit for misdemeanor offenders. They can be on probation for up to a year. For felony offenders, non-violent felonies, they can be on probation up to 2 years, not to exceed 4 years. And for felonies, there's no time limit for how long a young person can be on probation. And that extension of probation is for them to continue and to complete their treatment in the community. Also under HB 814, the new legislation, we must also report every time a young person has 2 or more unexcused absences from treatment service programming. We must report that to the juvenile court for those services, and that is what they extend their probation. So what we are engaging in as an agency is probation transformation to ensure that we are doing what we can to and to help kids successfully complete probation, to reward them with early exposure where we're able to close their case because they have met all the milestones that they themselves have partnered with us to establish, as well as ensuring that they are engaging in treatment services and removing any barriers to what that participation may be. And that is not solely because sometimes kids just don't want to engage. It could be a matter of programming. It could be a matter of transportation. In rural counties, that is a real struggle because services can be placed far out. So getting young people to service is important. So how we plan for rural counties is very important because understanding that the resource base is not as rich and it's very geographically dispersed as well. So how do we maximize that? When Adina speaks, she'll talk about the different services that kids get. But if the court determines that the young person is in placement, there are 3 levels. The first being level 1, which is community residential. That could be a therapeutic group home. It could be therapeutic therapeutic group home, independent living, any other kind of group home, treatment services, yeah. And then level 2 is staff secure. That is when you go to a facility, but it's not hardware secure, staff secure. And then, of course, hardware secure, and that's either for any of those services, it can be in data. So then we'll talk more about the services and our staff secured, hardware secure facilities. That's what for me. So again, ensuring that young people are successfully completing probation is a core guiding strategy for us moving into 2024, 2025, and 2026. So we are engaged in probation transformation. There are 5 core principles. This is the initiative of the Annie Casey Foundation to ensure that young people, again, are successfully completing conditions of probation, and thereby we are avoiding the uses of committed out-of-home care if you do it right the first time with community-based probation placement. So the 5 guiding principles of probation transformation is how do we expand diversion to prevent the number of kids who are entering the system getting on probation when we could have resolved up front with the right services as a diversion program, minimizing out-of-home placement in every form. That means minimizing the use of either staff secure, hardware secure, even community-based residential. That means working with our partners to ensure that young people and their families have some type of stable arrangement so that they can be at home receiving services as a family unit. Relationship-based, time-limited services. That means who's working with the young people and can we reduce the amount of time that they're on services. So our ability to align young people with people in the community because they see it, my staff case managers as part of the system. Other people in the grassroots providers and leaders and community service providers and community have a different relationship and a different lens and a different credibility, so to speak. I'm just briefly about the credible messengers in our Thrive Academy, but that is a core principle of the probation transformation work, and also in terms of relationship-based treatment service programming, and also leading with race. It is impossible to talk about a reimagined system of justice without talking about the disparate use of most secure resources and the disparate treatment of Black and brown kids here in Maryland at every single stage of decision making. So leading with race and equity is a guide and how we understand. When I say lead with race, it's more than just who are the kids on probation, but who are the children of color on probation, and what does that mean? Where are the services? If there are kids who are like our Hispanic Latinx community, are our services culturally competent? Are we engaging the Latinx community to serve those young people? So that's how you lead with race and ethnicity, and also meaningful community partnerships. So we have really good partnerships with the Choice Program, with ROCA, with YAP, but that's not enough for us. So right now, those are my 3 choices. And so we are working diligently to expand our continuum of services at every single point of the system so that we have more providers working with young people.
And, lastly, I want to talk about the Thrive Academy, which is my pride and joy. So the Thrive Academy, when the secretary joined the agency, he had a big, I think if you see the thick binder, it was like 40-some cases of kids who had been involved in, gun violence, some even fatally so. And so we actually work with, the Casey Foundation, the National Institute for Justice Reform, and our own research, department to look at cases, of the 37,000 cases that involved, gun violence to identify the young people, and we can have a scientific way of determining who are the kids who are most at risk of being, involved in gun violence, either as victim or offender, understanding that the research shows that most kids are more often the victims of gun violence more than offenders. And so we use that criteria, that report to establish criteria for what we call the Thrive Academy. And I'll just tell you the God honest truth. Thrive Academy did not have any significance. We started out with, it was totally just 25 kids. And so we Thrive 25. That's how we got to the word thrive. That's how we got to the word. But we started expanding it. So it's no longer 25 kids. And it became 50. Then Vinny said 75. Then he said almost 200. So we thought about where our gun violence is most prevalent, and it was Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel, and Prince George's County. So we rolled out the Thrive Academy, and those 4 jurisdictions between 2023 and the start of 2024. The power of the Thrive Academy is our work, as I spoke to earlier, about credible messengers. When you're working with people who have lived experience and know how to navigate the communities and the problems, more importantly, that young people and their families encounter in some of these communities, it changes the dynamics of how they receive assistance, advice, and mentoring. So our credible messengers are utilized by Thrive Academy kids when they are paired with not only a specialized DJS case manager who administers the case, but they receive a life coach who is that credible messenger who walks them through developing and leading a life plan. So the use of the credible messenger is a big part of the Thrive Academy. Another big success of the Thrive Academy is the suitcase of support, because that's more than just surveillance and compliance monitoring by DJS. But they actually get an entire array of resources to support their work, or to support their efforts in the community. So they get participation stipends, milestone stipends. They engage in employment services, vocational training. They also have a lot of trauma therapy available to them, and they engage in pro-social, individualized, and group activities. And a key part of that suitcase is our ability to move young people. Again, these are young people who are at the highest risk of being involved in gun violence, which means that they may be an imminent risk in the community. And so the ability to move them for their safety, not just that young person, but that entire family, we've done it several times to prevent a young person from being shot. So when we started Thrive Academy, we had one young person who was in facility about to come into community, and speaking with the life coach, that credible messenger, we found out that he actually had a hit on his life. And so we were able to move him back into his community in Baltimore City. We moved that family to another county where he received it in Baltimore County, where he still receives his Thrive services, but a liability to disrupt something or that would have placed him in jeopardy had he got home. And I'm back to that same neighborhood. We've also had like success stories with Thrive Academy. So even though our results are early, our success rate is pretty significant in that we have less than 2% have been shot of all our Thrive kids, as well as I think 4 out of every 5 have not had a reoffense for any gun-related offense, gun-related activity whatsoever. So our young people, they don't want to leave the program, so we had to develop a way to offload them a bit. And so they actually are going through, the young people who are effectively engaged in Thrive, they are actually going through training so that they too can become credible messengers for other young people. So again, that is my signature pride and joy program. I think in our agency, there are other kids maybe get mad because I think I have to spend more time with my probation kids, but Thrive, I think it works not only because of that suitcase, but also because there we have integrated a new voice that works differently with them, more incredibly with young people. I think I hit all my points.
Does it make sense for us to take some questions now? That was a lot, so.
I'm sorry.
No, we want a lot, I'll bring the microphone to, yes. No, just, I'm gonna bring you the mic.
So I think it's important to also address that law enforcement can do diversions themselves, correct?
Yeah.
So our SROs do diverse in team court. I'm a big advocate of team court. Love team court. Would love to see some state dollars in team court. And also I think that it would be important for those in the room to understand paper referrals. If you could explain to
Carrollton County, 99.9% of all referrals are paper and kids are never taken into custody.
Right.
So I think it's important for those in the room to understand that, maybe tail on that a little bit.
Yeah, and so again, like I said, majority of our referrals are paper referrals with some counties, doing a lot of in paper and not taking a lot of kids in custody. Most of our custody, where we have, doing trustful detention are, centered in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Arundel and Prince George and Montgomery. That's where we need traffic for that, but others are predominantly paper referral.
And I follow that up, because I think it's an important question. How does it actually work? Who signs the first piece of paper? Where does that piece of paper go? And how do you get the kid to show up somewhere when all that's out there is a report signed by an SRO or a member of the community?
Right, so when we receive the complaint, the first thing we do is establish juvenile court jurisdiction. That means that we have enough to say that this young person was effectively engaged or has been alleged to have been effectively engaged in something, active delinquent, and that they meet the age requirement. And so we then schedule an intake conference with young people and their families.
And how does that actually take place?
That can be done through two ways. They can come into the office and it can be done virtually. The pandemic taught us how to use our virtual tools. We have some families, because of their scheduling, cannot come into the office, and so we do it by phone. We do it by Google Meet, through a virtual platform. But ideally, we used to have 25 days to do an intake conference upon receiving a complaint. Under HB 14, the new legislation, we now have 15 days.
So there's enough information about the young person contained in the report, telephone number, guardian, parent, address, where the thing happened and so on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's actually a state form that every jurisdiction uses, and then the law enforcement officer put the charges on there, the article section.
Yeah.
Forward them through a intake officer.
to an intake officer, and we email that to the intake officer along with the report, and then the local office then does the intake. correct?
Yeah, we do get intake. Yeah, so
And
we
then-
have timeline.
In Caroline County, we also notify the local intake, which, I think there's some discretion whether you should or you shouldn't, on who we're going to refer to team court as well.
I think you should, and I
Yeah.
think that where we have the most effective partnerships with law enforcement is where we do that information sharing, and we also share our resources. If you want to divert, let's say you want to divert to a program that we use that you don't feel like you have access to, access for access, and we don't give it to you.
Well, I'm from one of those rural counties where we have very few resources for
Right.
diversion. So
Yeah.
team court is a very good one.
Mhm.
We love it. The problem is that if you've been referred once for assault, you can't be referred again for assault. You can't be referred for the same crime twice.
Right,
There is some leeway there, but.
right, and so I've been working with my staff also to expand the range of restorative practice. So it's more than just team court. We're using mediation more often. And another piece of restorative practice that is rarely used but very effective is community service.
Any other questions? Yes, Susan.
Um,
Wait, I'm bringing my.
taking your steps then today.
So I once read a report 100 years ago, and I don't know if it's still true, but that the majority of people that are in the juvenile service system start off in the DSS.
I don't have research to substantiate that. I don't know if anyone else can speak to that, but I do not. What I will say is that the majority, no, not majority. We see many kids at our front door who are DSS cases, and because of the difficulty accessing those resources or even placing a young person in temporary care, DJS, because they've been involved in the system, DJS becomes the answer to something. So I see that more than anything.
That's what I saw.
Yeah.
I mean, they would act out in foster
Yeah.
home and they would be
Mhm.
transferred to juvenile service. So what do you do when there isn't a parent? I mean, there's a parent, but they don't comes.
Right, so we do, and one of the things that started in Baltimore City, that I actually helped,
built years ago was family engagement, where we had
community-based provider that did the engagement with families, because when parents refuse, it's not because they don't love their children, it's because they're fed up.
Right.
And they don't know what to do. And so they think their only resource is the system. And so that is a conversation of education for us, but it's also an act of our intake staff is exercising some compassion and some empathy to take the time to find out and to hear what is the barrier, what is the concern, and how do we provide for that parental concern? Because that is what gives that child back in the community, but that also assures us that we have a partner in the terms of a parent or a guardian who will help keep that young person safe and to deserve public safety.
So that seems to say that you need a lot of be working with mental health or behavioral health support. And where do you get that?
And so we're building up our continuum of resources that we provide, but also one of the things that we have not done as well, and we're beginning to do more of, is to actually canvas and understand what's in the community and how do we tap into that. Our resources have been largely over the last several decades have been really driven towards compliance and monitoring. So under Secretary Shivaldi, we have more a lens now on the things that are much more holistic and comprehensive of need. And so there are many resources in the community. The question is, has DJS tapped into that? Do we navigate that? Do we know who the contacts are? Who is the person that we contact for this type of service and this type of need? And one of the things that we find to be most significant for us, if I go to any office and ask them our children, what their needs are, guess what? The first thing is they're hungry. Yeah. You cannot treat a child who's hungry.
That's profound.
Yes.
I'm so glad you brought up needs, and as you were speaking about earlier, the mask and how you guys are hoping to make some changes there. I'm wondering a little bit about IDT, just because it's kind of further upstream, and wondering about like how confident you all feel the results are there, and also whether you two are diverted, whether they get the IDT and if that information goes with them into the community in terms of what their needs are.
So the IDT does drive our decision making about that in terms of who we divert. It does not, if we resolve a case, then we may not get an IDT because we have established that we don't have juvenile court jurisdiction. So they do go through that. It has been validated, and Aaron, is it due for revalidation anytime soon? It's currently being revalidated. Okay, yeah, so it's currently being revalidated. I've heard mixed results about the IDT, but what I will say is I feel more comfortable having objective decision-making tool at the front door than nothing. Because if not, I'll get justice by geography and a lot of subjective decision-making for young people.
Okay, in the interest of time.
What happens if you
Hey,
can't
Doc, hey,
find,
Doc.
what happens if you can't find the child or find the family?
It depends on where the referral came from. If it's a paper referral and it's something, for example, that happened in school, and we can find that child. We're just going through the school system. That's very rare that we can't find a youth and or family member or parent. We may find a young person before we find that parent though, and that's when we determine that there is a need for a DSS engagement. When we don't have a guardian or a parent who is responsible and willing to accept supervision or even respond to our requests for them to come in for an intake.
Okay, Judge, can I ask one question, please? Yes, I don't think I need that. I got a pretty loud voice. So, I heard you mention earlier that in rural areas, there's concerns because we can't get the clients to the resource. And that struck me. That struck me a great deal. So, I assist with a football program and, we use Uber for other ride shares and we send them out to get the kids. And I'll tell you, these are all at-risk kids we've done this with. We got 3 in the NFL right now. We took the time to get them Ubers, make sure they get there every day, make sure they're fed every day properly. But I would just offer that to you, not for Uber. I don't work for Uber.
Right, I get you.
Ride
Yeah.
share systems are, I feel like I pay for them with 5 kids, but it is we found that to be a tremendous resource. And the Uber drivers actually care. We explained the story to them. They look for that share, that ride
Okay.
to get it.
That's
And,
phenomenal.
and they want to be part of the solution.
And we also have a rural strategies team. It's one of our innovation teams with line level case managers, and mid-level managers who are actually making decisions about strategies. And so that rural strategies team is encompassing of Eastern Shore, Western, and the Tri-County area. So they'll be providing a set of recommendations because they need strategies that look a little different in places like Prince George and Baltimore City.
Now, I know the secretary just stroke when I said pay for Uber. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We actually do use some Uber.
Yeah.
It's just a great resource.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah,
So
okay.
thank you for that.
This clearly won't be your only time presenting to us. We look forward to the continued conversation, but we'll pass the speaking stick now.
Absolutely. Good evening. My name is Eva Levi. I am the Deputy Secretary of Residential Services. I thoroughly enjoy always hearing how passionately Lisa speaks to the resources that are available to our kids in the community. I think we all want to get to the point where we are not sending our youth to detention centers, to out-of-state placements and those kinds of things. And we know that the answer to what our youth need should be in their own community, right? And that is what an environment that we're working toward. Until we get to that perfect world, though, we have detention centers. Okay, so right now we currently operate 8 facilities. We have, I sort of say, 4.5 detention centers. Baltimore City Juvenile Justice Center, and I try not to use acronyms, because they CPJC. Hickey, Charles Hickey School, which is in Baltimore County. Cheltenham, which is in PD County. We have Lower Eastern Shore Children's Center, which is on obviously Lower Eastern Shore. Western Maryland Children's Center, which is our girls facility, and this is why I say we have 3.5 detention facilities. But most of you know, there are just a deficit of resources available to young ladies outside of detention. So treatment environments, food homes, those kind of living programs outside of residential services. So what we've done is we've actually created a treatment program for girls in the detention center. This is a separate unit, unfortunately, it's under the same group, but it's a separate unit where the services that are delivered, and we'll talk a little bit about that shortly, the services that you would get in a treatment or committed, it's going to be treatment and committed interchangeably, that you would get in our committed program, they're receiving at WCC, which is our girls. Detention center. For our committed program, and I'll add one more thing. The population of girls, as you know, in terms of being referred to DJS is very volatile, right? Goes up, comes down, goes up, comes down. And so we have to have some flexibility. So our Lower Eastern Shore facility, which is a all male detention facility, we've had to turn 1 or 2 of those units, and it just sort of depends on the populations and the referral. We've had to turn 1 or 2 of those units into a girl unit. So our Lower Eastern Shore facility is a co-ed facility, and this is strictly for detention. That make sense? For our committed programs, the Peace Academy, you'll see the Peace Academy at WMCC. That is what I'm talking about in terms of the treatment program for girls that is embedded into our Western WMCC program. We have Green Ridge Youth Center and Backbone Youth Center, and also Victor Coven Youth Center. Green Ridge and Backbone are staff secured treatment centers, meaning there are no hardware blocks. Those youth receive treatment. We'll talk a little bit more about what their treatment looks like. And then Victor Cullen, which is in Stabilisville, is our hardware secure. So those are committed use to our court orders to be in a hardware secure environment. Oh, that doesn't work here. Here. All right, I'm gonna have to put my glasses on for this and read my notes. Excuse me. So just a little bit of history about DJS and sort of the evolution. In 1830, Maryland established the Maryland House of Refuge, and in 1855, the Maryland House of Refuge opened in Baltimore City, removing only white youth from the adult jail, which left the youth of color in those adult jails. The facility later became later moved to Baltimore County and became our Hickey School. In 1870, the Maryland House of Reformation opened in Cheltenham.
removing Black youth from the adult prison. It wasn't until 1873, though, where that facility actually opened up. In 1951, Cheltenham and Hickey were ordered desegregated following a protracted litigation by Thurgood Marshall. And then in 1877, we became what is now known as DJS. It was the Department of Juvenile Justice for a while, and now we are DJS. I'm sorry. All right. We both done very short attention. Really good. And what we do is not always. So in our committed programs, and we'll talk about, well, in our detention centers and committed programs, so in our detention centers, the services that we offer are medical services, the 24-hour medical services, so nursing on site, access to NP health. We have behavioral health services on site. We also have in all of our facilities education. We are either educated by the Juvenile Services Education Program or JSEP. I am doing my best to not use those initials, but JSEP provides all educational services across all of our facilities. And obviously we have things like recreation, activities and a bunch of different things for our kids to engage in. Inside of our detention center under the secretary, one of the things that Secretary Shiraldi noted was just number one, the limited options for youth who are ordered to to receive treatment in a staff to our harder secure environment. So we created, or they created, and I inherited pending placement units. And what pending placement units are specific units that are inside of our detention center where those youth, they're post-adjudicated for the most part. These are youth who are post-adjudicated, and we know they are going to a treatment environment. We may not know if it's hardware secure, we may not know if it's staff secure, maybe we do, but there's a long waiting list, right? And so but for the pending placement unit, those youth might sit 4 or 5 months in a detention center waiting for a bed to open up. So what we've done is open up on those units, those specific youth who are post-adjudicated, the opportunity to give them an introduction to treatment. So they'll start family therapy, they'll start individual therapy, they're introduced to dialectical behavioral therapy or DGP, cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT, and also activities, right? Like kids have to have fun. Part of the work that we do in all of this work is like, what is positive youth development, right? How do you behave? How do you advance in a positive manner? What are we exposed to? A lot of our youth, as we all know, come to us with a lot of trauma. A lot of our youth, post-adjudication, are going to be with us for some time. What we want to do is start treatment early, so that they have the opportunity to get used to what a treatment environment looks like. It's very, very different from what would be very, very different from the services that are delivered in detention environments. Yeah, thank you. So this is our innovation team. So another genius idea from our planning administration under Benny Shirazi and Mark Schindler is our innovation team. Our innovation team, they're focused at DPJJC, which is in Baltimore City, Western Maryland, our growth facility of Victor College. And with our innovation team, the goal really is to look at how young people and our staff experience this system, right? That in a perfect world, as we said, they would be in their communities, receiving this education, the behavioral health, the medical support in their community, dental service. While they are with us, what we want to do is talk to them about how do we center the practices, the policies, the procedures that we do, such that the youth have a voice, such that our staff have a voice in terms of what we do. When we think about someone who is being told what to wear, right? Being told when they should eat, being told when they can move from one room to another. I'm actually talking about the staff when I describe it, right? I'm talking about the staff. So our staff, our entry-level staff and our youth are experiencing the system at the same time. So what better way to inform how we move our practices than to get those two voices together and revamp how we deliver services. That is the goal of our innovation team. For our committed programs, and again, this is going to be for our pending placement units, which are in 3 of our detention centers, as well, 2 of our detention centers, and 1 of our 2 of our detention centers, Cheltenham and DPJJC. we offer treatment programs in our staff that you're in hardware here. What we really focus on is BBT skills. So how do we work with youth to adjust their attitudes and behaviors? One of the things that we're looking at is what kind of data did we collect? So in measuring recidivism, there's a lot more that goes into recidivism than did you get rearrested, right? And we unfortunately see youth more than once. Some of the questions we might look at rather than did they get rearrested, why they're back here is have they had a shift in their ideation in the way that they think? So this case first came to us and thought, yeah, you know, it's okay to carjack because they got money. Well, they can replace it. There's insurance. Another conversation to have with this youth is what was your thought process? I made a mistake. I really want to restore, right? So are they shifted in what we call criminalistic behaviors or attitudes and behaviors? Have they shifted their friendship group? Most of our kids are going back, right? So the same sort of environment, and we're pouring all of these tools into them. We're hoping to pour as many tools into their families as well. So how do we build them up such that they have a layer or coat of armor, if you will, with them so that they can know how to behave? You may still come into contact with that number of people, but what can you do otherwise? How cool is it to say, no, I'm good, I gotta go to school in the morning, I can't do that tonight, right? And not sort of call them out. Like these are sort of the concepts of things that we do when we talk about DBT skills. Is that it? That's really easy. That's all right. It's only our resources were lopsided. So we look at all of these incredible opportunities and resources that our youth have in the community. And unfortunately, as we all know, a lot of the money that we spend in systems center around keeping you outside of their community. So I look forward to continuing this work with each and every one of you. We kind of come up with ideas on how we can shift some of those resources.
Questions, comments?
Any questions?
Out of
the number of children that are under DJI supervision, what is the percentage of the children that are in a committed environment versus those that are under your supervision in general? And one of those 5 steps along the way.
I'll say this and then maybe they can speak. The majority of youth that are referred to Department of Juvenile Services do not come anywhere near our detention. The majority of youth that we support, we are supporting locally in your communities and with community services. I'm sorry. In terms of percentages, I support one over data for this here. Penny?
Okay. Yeah, we have 350
kids.
Yeah, about 350 kids in a residential facility.
Yeah.
About 90 of them, give or take, are committed. The rest are detention. For the kids are detained, about 6 out of 10 are going to an adult court process, but actually not in the juvenile system, still tried as adults. And another 15% of the kids were tried as adults, now they're in the juvenile system. It starts all over. There's one thing you need to know, it's not like the adult system where if you're getting a 1-year sentence every 6 months.
Can you all hear?
No.
If you're getting a 1-year sentence and you do 6 months in jail waiting, you only got 6 months left on it's good time, not in the juvenile system. You do 6 months waiting to be reverse waived, and then 2 more months waiting for your juvenile adjudication. Now you've done 8 months, you get bigger calling. 6-month program, you start at 0.
Yep.
So that's 300 kids there, and then about 1,500 are on probation or aftercare at any given time. Yes.
So if I'm a child and I'm in the adult system, if I'm a child and I've been charged, I'm in the adult system, and now I get way back to the juvenile system, during that period, I mean, they may be actually in Victor or one of the other places. Are you still providing them with those resources that we discussed?
Absolutely.
As long as they're in the juvenile facility, they're getting it. But if they're in an adult facility, they're not getting any of that.
Right.
They're gonna get moved back to your system and then they're gonna start all over again.
Yes, except for the very last part. I actually don't know what they get in the adult system, but I do think they get like school. I don't think they get enough.
Yeah.
Depends on the place. Some places have enough kids, some places have 1 kid. You know, you all might know better. To me, I don't know what happened. to young people when they're in an adult jail waiting for their kid.
Well, federal law certainly imposes a requirement that they get educational services, including IDAs and.
But in terms of DBT, TBT, they did not get those.
And it's just, the restarting of the clock is true, even for those youth who are in, having that preview experience that you were talking about, where you're starting getting.
Yeah, they start their clock, we get to start their clock early.
Okay.
Supposed to communicate kids who are with us, yeah, and they get to start their clock early.
If you start the process, and I've already had this question, and maybe today somebody can really clear it up. A referral can come, but a referral could be a FINS referral as opposed to,
Yes.
so could you tell me how you operate with them?
So FINS referrals are,
Just to make sure we're on the same page, tell us what sends it.
This is children, child in need of supervision, CINS, child in need of supervision.
And how does that differ than child in need of support?
I'm not, no, they have child in need of assistance, which is more child welfare, and then child in need of supervision, which is more juvenile justice or child on their way into juvenile justice system because of behavior issues.
So in the code, it seems to be in the writing, that word support versus supervision is interchangeably used, which is concerning to me.
Right, it should be because.
Yeah.
When it comes to us, it's child in need of supervision, and we handle those through the intake office as well. And so if we receive a referral for a FINS case, so right now, under the new law, any young person who was under the age of 13 who has committed, or led to have committed an auto theft, they are required, police are required to request that we file a FINS petition for those cases. And so we do not file that FINS petition, and we ask, that does not involve the state attorney's office, that's us going directly to court, to do the petition. And so what we find is that the services, though, for children in need of supervision is not much different than kids that we divert, or any kids who are engaged in delinquent behavior. But again, the point that you made is noted.
Does that speed up the process though, in terms of their access to services? Is there anything that? No.
Judge has a question.
Can I just ask a question about how many FINS cases
Have been filed in the state of Maryland in the last year.
I know that since HBA 14
prior to
started,
the new law?
oh, but even after the new law, we've only had three.
Prior to the new law?
So,
Not many at all. It's not something that we see a lot of.
They're not
And,
being
and the new law is only, so far, I have less than 5 that have been referred since November 1.
and so, but it's not, avenue that's pursued more often, and I think it's not pursued because it's actually addressed by law enforcement, quite frankly, effectively,
And working with the school resource officers and the local resources, and so we're not seeing things in the way that I think maybe legislative.
Wouldn't it be you all that are filing the FINS?
Or do we, if we'll file the thing, if we receive a request to file that thing.
Overseer. I don't know, there's a lot of ways.
Okay.
I just want to be clear that, and I make sure I understand that, law enforcement filed a sin with DJS. DJS then has an opportunity to resolve it or deal with it on the informal level without filing an actual petition with the court. And it's a voluntary process.
yes, it is. The same three decisions that we'll make to either, not accept it or not, not do anything with it, we resolve it. We can, inform it, or we can actually go through a formal petition to the court.
Okay, and the only mandated one that's required by DJS now to file an actual petition in court is the auto theft.
Under 13.
Okay,
Can I say that before the change in the law, we'd asked about filing FINS, and we were told by the local office not to do it, there's a waste of time. Just let the child does that same crime multiple times, but then is not going to trigger anything.
So I think.
I think the jury is out, but, no, go ahead.
So a couple things. One is, when I first got here, there was a lot of concern about kids under the age of 13 and nothing happening to them, right, no matter what they did for nonviolent offenses. And law enforcement wasn't filing FINS petitions, didn't know how, didn't believe in them. There was just a whole range of reasons why they were like, knows in petitions. So we did 2 sets of what we call lunch and learns for law enforcement in every county. We saw a pretty substantial uptick in terms of, we had many times as many FINS petitions, but it still wasn't many FINS petitions. It was many times a very small number. But we just kept providing the information. We keep providing the information. We can provide services for a kid, whether we formalize the case or not. We're gonna send a kid someplace, don't actually have to formalize it. I think there's reasonable, people would disagree as to whether formalization is good or not. Some people feel like it gives parents and us more of a stick. Some people feel like it brings kids closer to being drawn into a system that will help them self-identify as delinquents. So that's, I think, good progress for this group.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yes, please.
So when we were looking at this, so I was part of 814. When we were looking at this, one of the questions I had, I saw a great disparity in jurisdictions. Probably the jurisdiction that did it the most was Charles County. And my county was probably the jurisdiction that did it the least. Well, picture for the record. So I didn't understand the disparity and then maybe that's a conversation about consistency and what value that has.
And I would add that,
And I see your hand, but I would add that when it comes to sins, that's really a way of saying this child needs attention. It's the young person who is potentially in crisis. And do we need to have an official process to engage them, do a sins petition where we can do some other things? Nothing precludes us from working with families to get them the services that they need. Because before we got a request for a sins referral, someone has called us, either a parent or even a neighbor, about that young person. So I just think I agree that, the jury's out. It could be seen one way or the other. I think it potentially is more of a gateway into more system involvement, that I would like to see us not do very often.
I think, and I just want to make sure, I think the other concern that, I as a prosecutor have with FINS petitions, and obviously we're not involved, is the fact that if that child doesn't live in Montgomery County where I prosecute, you cannot give them services.
so we have an issue specifically in Montgomery County with kids jumping the line, like the District of Columbia coming over here, or Virginia, or whatever the situation is. And so we recently have been following, and since has been filed, and they have been rejected because there's no jurisdiction allowed. So there are no services that are not being able to be provided, and I'm sure everybody knows probably the case I'm talking about. But there was also other children involved in that particular incident recently that had the same situation happening. So I think that that's also an issue that happens with FINS, and no services can be provided.
Thanks.
Thank you. So, I am thoroughly and completely confused. And I worked on House Bill 814 months before we even introduced it to the legislature. So I have like 10 questions here. I'm not gonna ask them all. Don't worry, I won't ask them. But since we have started talking about the family petition, and since Judge Weathersby asked her question, it's got me to thinking just a little bit, because I thought of SINs as a good thing, in the sense that it was systematic. I know systems, everybody doesn't like systems. I like systems because I can understand what the expectation should be. And so when I explain it to someone else, I have something to refer to, and I can say what the expectation is and try to manage the expectations. What I don't understand is, without a SINs petition, how does DJS get involved? Because you were saying, Deputy Secretary Gary, that more likely than not, a child, the community may have already called about a child, or people know, or whatever. Tell me about that circumstance, and what can DJS do without a SINs petition and without a true referral
from a police officer? Is there anything that DJF can do, or do you need that referral to trigger your involvement? And I think that's the difference, because although it will all be voluntary, the only thing that will mandate a family to engage in services if we actually file a petition and it was granted by the court. The question then becomes, do you need to engage institutions in that way, for families and children, or, for children to get the services that they need? They are involved in other things in the community. They are in school. You can get mentoring through your IEP process. So part of what we do, and it's voluntary on our part, it's not something that we have to do, but we do it because it prevents that young person from coming through our door for the delinquent act later on. But how do we teach the family that, and how do we assess what the family has access to, and then help them navigate? It is a work of navigation, and you don't have to be system involved to have someone assist you with navigating the resources that are at your disposal, as well as helping you to maximize and leverage the things in your own, like using your insurance, using your IEP for certain services. And so that is a matter of just working with families.
And I have an entire intake staff who are very proficient
In that, I would rather that we spend our time helping families navigate and develop new capacity in the community, as opposed to involving a lot of kids institutionally. Because let's say they are institutionally involved, and we have a SINS petition filed and granted by the court, that does not mean that that family still has capacity or even will to navigate that system.
So how much overlap is there with Department of Social Services and Department of Juvenile Services?
It's a lot. We have,
And can you briefly, if you can, because I don't want to, I don't, times. Can you talk about that overlap and how, is there any referral process? What is the overlap there?
The shortest answer is it is less than desirable. And in some jurisdictions, it is amazing. In Hagerstown, Washington County, Maryland, our crossover efforts are amazing. And they're amazing because those persons have been working together for a very long time, and they've learned how to share limited resources.
because it's a rural community. And again, they have the kind of relationships where they can actually do a lot of the cross coordination between, what are the welfare issues and what are the delinquency issues. And a lot of times, the most difficult complex cases are the ones that fall in the crack are the welfare issues. In other jurisdictions, it is not existent at all. And so we are working with Secretary Lopez and his staff to
Try to certainly, let's just be real about this and say what the issues are.
Yeah.
In the counties where we have the
And
problem.
last quick question, how much population play into that?
You say population.
Population meaning the population of the jurisdiction. You know what I mean? Sometimes in rural areas, the population may not, while there may be more geographic space that is, land
the
down.
smaller groups.
Yes.
And so the population does play a role, because in those jurisdictions where they're able to do really effective crossover,
It's a reduced number, it's a smaller number of
kids, and also they know a lot of the kids, because the kids are, if they have school involvement, if they've had other involvement in the juvenile or child welfare system, people in the community know about that involvement. So population plays a huge role. I know that I would struggle to replicate what's happening in Hagerstown and Baltimore City.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
In fact, Mr. Secretary, I was going to absolutely give you the last official word tonight. So you have the floor.
Great, thank you for giving us this time. I just want to leave you with two thoughts. One is we didn't really talk a lot about resources, but the department gave back $134 million over the 10 years prior to my arrival.
What? Say that again, please.
It was about 13, so an average $13.4 million a year. And when I started, I did a listening score, which I've done now twice in every county. And all I heard from law enforcement, state attorneys, judges, we need more mentoring. We need more boys and girls clubs and youth bureaus and mental health services, substance use, and we would give them money back. So we're not giving money back anymore. I put a stop to that. We're spending it all. And the governor gave, and the General Assembly gave us $17 million more this year. And, we'll see how the budget goes this year, but, and that, this year is not old. It started in July. And so we're beginning. Thrive is one. We've got a couple of versions of Thrive. Some of our kids are struggling on probation, so we're going to expand Thrive to high-risk kids aren't doing well, there's a pre-trial version of it, right? So we're expanding the contingency. Let me just leave it at that from beginning to end. So $17 million do it? Probably not. Let's just keep the poke in the eye for sure. And then the other point I want, so more to come. But we're not giving money back, more money. Second thing is that, and on that, that's part of our charge here. We've got money from the Justice Department to assess the continuum of care, do a gap analysis, and then start to fill in the blank. We will have those people, I forget whose committee that is, but whatever committee that is, we will assign them to that committee so they can work with not just my staff, but the committee on that assessment of our rehabilitative services. And then the last point is data can help this conversation. We specifically didn't get data heavy on this one because we wanted this to be about what the process is. But like some of these questions about, does the kid do well? The kids do, but one question, one might add, that dichotomy I raised. The kids do better when you formally process them or when you don't formally process them and just provide them with services. I think we have data on that we could make available to this group to say, check it out. I know 73% of our kids are one and done, pretty much no matter what we do. They just get scared. They ride the back of a cop car for the first time in their life. It scares the heck out of them. They never do it again. So I don't want to apply a lot of resources there because then I don't have them for the more.
I can guarantee you this commission will be data hungry like you've never seen before. We will insist on data. So let me close this down. Thank you all so much. This was incredible. This was our first substantive session. I think we all learned so much, and we learned a couple of additional things. First of all, we see how important it is to have this diverse group. I mean, we got legislators who wrote the damn bill. We've got law enforcement who are out there on the ground every day doing what our professionals are describing to us. And we've got advocates and we've got knowledgeable people, including Judge Wesley, and Kala, who work in the system and see what's being discussed day in and day out. And so this is going to be a rich process. The tests, the work groups are going to have a lot to work with, and we're all on first name basis in this commission. So thank you all very much. Yielding back 6 minutes to you. Be safe. Come and see you.
Yep, this is our.
We will. You don't need to invite us.
Back here, if you guys need to call and get the facilities or one of our intake centers.
We're like stopping by mom's on a Sunday afternoon. We don't need an invitation. We're gonna pop in, but we will give you a warning. We will give you a warning. Is there anything for the good of the order as we close it out?
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you all very much. Betsy had the final word.
So you do have in your packet, and you should have gotten an email, the meeting date for the rest of through October. Unless to be say, otherwise, assuming it'll be here from 4 to 6. I think we may play around with moving it to other locations, but you'll know. And then work group chairs will be in touch about staying organized.
We have the schedule. There are certain to be changes. We've heard from a few people who Wednesdays at 4 o'clock really just don't work. So we're going to move things around, but we'll give you plenty of notice well in advance. But we're basically going to stay with the late afternoon session. I promise it won't be on a Saturday. It won't be on a Sunday. It won't be on a Friday. So, okay. Thank you all very much. Happy holidays. Stay safe. And we'll see you in January.